and gentlemen, gender non-conforming and trans deities, welcome to the Hoodoisie! We are Chicago's bi-weekly underground live stream, and now web news show that gives Black optic and radical perspectives on culture and politics. I'm your host, Ricardo Gamboa, or Ricardo Gamboa. Let's give it up for me, motherfuckers. All right, so what's been going on since the last time we were together? Well, Kevin Hart was slated to host the Oscars until his sordid history of homophobic tweets was dug up and Hart pulled out. And it's just crazy because it's always like these annoying ass ugly dudes that none of us faggots want to have sex with that are always the most homophobic, like Mike Pence. You know, the thing that does kind of piss me off though is how eager white liberals were to condemn Kevin Hart on homophobic tweets against gays, but spent the whole goddamn week celebrating the life of George Bush with convenient amnesia about his homophobic policies that actually killed thousands of gays during the AIDS epidemic. That's like the whitest ass shit to do. Speaking of racist, corrupt white men going to hell, Alderman Ed Burke had his offices raided last Thursday by federal agents with no comment as to yet why. An alderman of the 14th Ward for over 40 years, a former cop and ex-Trump attorney, Burke leveraged his public servant position for personal gain, forced poor communities to shoulder financial burdens while making millions for men like Trump, and has been considered the most powerful man on city council, but is now expected to be indicted as he faces the collapse of his political career. I have no jokes, I just think it's really good for that motherfucker. Speaking of trouble, tonight's show is entitled Radical While Black and remembers Fred Hampton. Our featured guest this evening is none other than Fred Hampton Jr. Hey. And our other featured guest is activist and mother Dorothy Holmes. Yeah. Our musical guest this evening is motherfucking mellow, but keep your heads on because before we get to all that and transform you, we'll inform you with Hoodoisie tea time. So let's get started with our first topic tonight. So after years of fighting, Southside parents and youth won a victory this week when for the first time in history, a Cook County judge blocked a Chicago school closing. National Teachers Academy is one of the only elementary schools in the city that has top ratings while serving mostly black and low-income students. So why close it down? Oh, well, because wealthy white parents in the South Loop told Rom, we want that building for our kids. So CPS worked out a plan to turn NTA into a high school that would serve the South Loop, Chinatown, and a tiny sliver of Brownsville. Throughout this process, the city has tried to pit community against community, forcing them to fight against each other for scraps. So here's my question. Now that we know it's not getting closed down, how do you think this victory can be beneficial to our movements? Man, like my ESL teacher is like, bitch, get it together.
I feel like it hasn't, especially for the people who were in the city fighting against the 50 school closings. I was definitely one of them. Are gonna have to make it a bigger deal in the black community, which I don't think is happening. Right? If I go home and I walk down my block, I don't think that people are recognizing the impact of this victory. Right? So we need to spread it and then have people realize like this happened. Now we have to do it again. We still have like hella school buildings. Some of them was brand new. And they're just sitting empty, right? And taking back these schools. I went to Brazil, and they just take over everything. And I came back like ready, fired up to do it. So NTA did it. We need to follow that lead, take back the schools, the mental health clinics, some new shit we ain't even started on taking back yet. Take back gyms.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should try to like find the benefit or the positive to like affirm in any victory. So in this moment, like it is a W for the public. It is a W for the people. So we like desperately need our communities to like embody the fact that we need a cooperative political economy that is taking our needs off the market and providing the needs to the people, right? And so that means, our needs are education, our needs are housing, our needs are food, and as long as that is at the control of like corporate structure and these ideas of like competing over prices, the people that are being harmed will continue to be harmed. So it is a lesson because, they showed their mess in this shit. They weren't like trying to hide what they were on. So it really, you can see how they work and you can see the communication of how like the backdoor channels of power and how the elite and how specifically like nonprofit structures are like coercing, enforcing, and threatening the public and threatening government needs that the people are dependent upon.
I actually live about 6 blocks away from NTA on the Pilsen-Chinatown border. And I think one of the things, there's 2 things that I think need to come out of this. One is a rebranding of the messaging around this, because at the root of it, there was a conflation between the desires of the wealthy white folks in the South Loop and the predominantly immigrant community, 70% immigrant community that is Chinatown. And what they were asking for, the people of Chinatown have been asking for decades. And they were organizing even as early as like 2000, 2003, specifically around this and the needs and the growing needs of that community, given the continual influx of specifically Chinese immigrants into that community still means they need a high school. And that wealth and race have now been conflated, as well as national origin have now been conflated together as if, you know, this predominantly minority group wanted the same, for the same reasons. NTA is a specific opportunity, I think, for the whole city to rally around the reality of what it means to support high-performing African-American youth. That was a level 1+ school. And when you think about the number of level 1+ schools that are at least 80% black, you don't have very many of them. This was a solid, message that I felt from the city and from the South Loop and from the damn neoliberals out there, that we do not prioritize education if the skin color is not the right one.
Chicago machine politics is reincarnating itself with a progressive face. If you check, everyone wants to be a bold new progressive. If I hear the words bold new progressive one more fucking time,
Emerging new progressive.
I'm gonna drink this champagne harder. This month, Chicago's supposed progressive savior and my new arch nemesis, Chuy Garcia, has joined together with Ram Tino in chief, Luis Gutierrez, and machine supervillain Danny Solis to form a political organization called the Latino Leadership Council. Its purpose is to build economic and political power among Latinos. At the same time, Chuy has been going around endorsing a bunch of basic-ass aldermanic candidates. Some of them, aldermen like Cardenas, don't even pretend to be progressive and not fucked up. So what does it mean to even be progressive in this political moment, particularly when everyone is gunning for that title in this election? Tony Preckwinkle being named a progressive candidate. How do we keep our movements, right? And that's what I'm really wondering, like how do we keep our movements from being co-opted precisely in this moment, right? After the advent of Black Lives Matter, when so much of progressive radical rhetoric is being co-opted, whether it's by Hollywood or our own political systems.
It doesn't have to escalate to the mayoral candidacy scale, but there's lots of like really fuck shit going on in the progressive community, right? And we're like, well, that was terrible, but we've got them out of our house, right? They're going in some other like chicken coop, like destroying shit or whatever, right? And as long as they're a little bit further away, then it's okay. We're not gonna say anything, right? And then these people end up being able to rise to power. It's always a house of cards, right?
And we also, like, at a first level, we gotta accept it. Like, our movements are always gonna be co-opted.
Right.
Black culture is always gonna be co-opted. Progressive consciousness is always gonna be co-opted, because that shit is dope. And that's what non-dope people are gonna do, is co-opt, because they can't create it for themselves. In mainstream spaces, progressive means a performative opposition to like the current power structure, which means nothing, right? Because it's just a performance. What we can do is be clearer in our vision that we hold people accountable to, right? So progress is a relative concept. So progressing from what and to what.
You get lost because you don't define the thing up front, right? And then that allows anybody and everybody to come in under that non-definition, and then murk it up until you eventually are dealing more with a popularity race than a clarity race. So, voting rights, yeah, women voting and such.
Socialism.
Some of these things were considered very, very radical, and that would have been considered progressive in its time. Today, it's not considered terribly radical. And so along the way, I think people who are sometimes arbitering that movement also need to understand that there needs to be a constant proposition of putting those definitions out front consistently as time changes, and that's not what we're doing.
Let's get to our speed round really quick. The Yellow Vest protests have been raging in France for the past week. They started out in response to President Macron's, I just make every name that's not like blatantly English into Spanish, because like, Presidente Macron's new fuel tax. Honestly, compared to Americans, it took the French very little to get off their asses and take the streets. So here's my question for you. What do you think the American government would have to do to cause this level of American insurrection?
take mayo out the stores, and white people go have a motherfucking fit. And then but no, we're too soft. We're too soft. There's got to be some like extreme shit. Like a politician has to eat a baby in front of like CNN for some shit, for us to do some shit, because we're really soft.
Nah, they wouldn't do it. They would just like talk about puppies or some shit. That still wouldn't, like, it's only consumption, right? So we can make a joke like Starbucks, Amazon, whatever, but like Americans are consumers. They define themselves through consumption. So as long as that is not disrupted, there's not going to be a mass movement. Like France is not as big as Texas, and they had like 250,000 people in the street over like 2,000 rallies, right? The entire country was up in arms around structure, and they have unions, they have different political structures that allow people to like be more human than just workers and consumers. So unless people can't go to Walmart or can't get their socks or can't do the Amazon Prime, I think America's gonna keep watching TV.
What you feel, is it real? Change your mind, let me know. Hold time, let it show, no chill on the thrill, feel it high, hit you low. Hold time, it's a show. No rolling, only thing that master cloudy around these times, so patrolling. Had to put a bounty on my mind, Globy holding no assist, steady counting on them downs, won't be just another stack. I'm Amari in his prime, hope I rise like Phoenix before I make it to New York. Wish these rhymes was a genie, I ain't Craig Newport. I did see Sab on the telly, no real rap fetty, yeah, but fans from Australia. New nephew, little man getting heavier, still ain't got no kids, out here looking for a carrier with Daria. Stock in the dairy area, cream everywhere, punch drunk emotions hit a knock me. What you feel, is it real? Change your mind, let me know. Hold time, let it show, no chill on the thrill, feel it high, hit you low. Hold time, channel hard times, make it go cold. Pay attention, all signs out on this road. Baby, when star line, life come a car line, maybe it be our time till we no more. Life is dainty till the day is quite frankly Tyrone Hill. How you feel? World the crusher, you was just a daffodil. At least you ain't pushing daisy, still a free man. Slaving Morgan, how a nigga agent never seen me as the baby out of man. Capitan, Mr. Phillips, when they fill us with the pressure, I'ma shimmer out the jam. Nigga went from snapping like it's poetry. Happy got the joy with me. No nigga negative to saying yes to flowetry. Figures don't compare to their statures, royalty. Mile high spirit reminiscent on the lower me. Way past boiling point, cooking with some oil on it, base table sharing content. What you feel, is it real? Change your mind, let me know. What you feel, is it real? Let me know. No chill on the thrill. Channel hard times, make it go cold. Pay attention, all signs out on this road. Baby, when star line, life come a car line. Maybe it be our time till we no more. Make some noise, y'all enjoy that.
Dorothy Holmes is a grandmother to 11 grandkids and mother to 3 children, including Ronald Johnson, aka Ronnie Man, who was murdered by CPD officer George Hernandez on October 12, 2014. Since then, Dorothy has also become a mother of the movement seeking justice for her son, preserving his legacy, and fighting for other families impacted by state violence. Please welcome Dorothy Holmes. So I think I want to just start this off this conversation with you just saying what is the story? Telling us the story that you know.
On October the 12th, 2014, it was about 12:45 that the phone kept ringing, and I wouldn't answer the phone, so I was telling my daughter, she don't want nothing, because I was getting my hair done, and I wouldn't ever answer the phone, so it's my other daughter kept calling, but my youngest daughter, I told her, go ahead and answer the phone, see what she wanted, and I just heard her say, he shot, and I'm like, who shot? She Ronnie Man, so my heart dropped, where he at? And she said King Drive, I'm thinking okay, he's in Parkway. So I jumped in my car, I was on 122nd and Normal, I jumped in my car and made it to 53rd and King Drive with less than 3 minutes. I threw my hazard lights on, I was blowing my horn, going straight through the lights. So when I made it to the scene, an officer was standing there and some guys was walking up to me and they was like, them motherfuckers right there shot him. And I turned around and I looked like, who, the police? And they was like, yeah. I'm like, so where my son at then? So they told us Northwestern, so now we heading towards Northwestern. Some people went over to Stroger, some people went to the hospital on 95th. Everybody was just scattered everywhere, and just come to find out he's right there on 58th and Maryland at the university. So we went to the hospital, and they kept saying, we're gonna let y'all see him in a little while. Y'all can see him in a little while, but that little while never came because I never got a chance to identify my son that night. So one of the officers, there was a white shirt, he came out laughing. He was just shot one time, so now you shouldn't start a riot up here. So now they calling for backup. So they put the hospital on lockdown and told everybody to go home because we couldn't identify him, that we'll be contacted when we can identify him. So I went to the morgue that Monday because they say he should have been ready Monday. And I got there, I couldn't identify him. They told me to come back, he wasn't ready. So I went back to the morgue. That Wednesday, they finally let me identify him. I'm like, okay, why is his eye black? But not knowing that he was shot, he was shot at 5 times, and 2 of the bullets hit him, which one hit him in the back of the leg, the other one hit him in the back where it hit the main artery and exited through his eye socket. So when they came out with the news story, they said that he turned around and he pointed the gun at the officer. That's why the officer shot him. But there was another video going around like, they just killed that man for no reason. He didn't even do nothing. They like, look at them, they over there sneaking, they doing something they ain't got no business doing. So I started paying like close attention to that video that had surfaced, and they told me that he died in the hospital, but my son died right there on the scene where they covered his body up at. So they moved his body and hurried up to the hospital with him where they could pronounce him dead. And we heard the 911 calls. They never would tell the dispatcher whether if he was alive or was he dead. So the dispatcher like, in other words, what type of okie dokie shit y'all on? Because they would never tell a man his condition. So how I found out that there was a video of the police dash cam footage, I went down there to Emperor. After I buried my son, since I couldn't get no information that I wanted, I went down there to them. Why haven't nobody contacted me saying what happened to my son on that night? Larry Maroney from Emperor, he came out and he was like, well, we got a video too. I'm like, so we got the same video? He like, no, we got a dash cam footage, but by now he not gave me too much information, he not walked off. He came back out with a lady who was, handled the case, and then she was like, well, where you get your video from? No, why y'all ain't never tell us about that dash cam footage that y'all had? I don't have to share nothing with you.
And when you say about independent police review authority, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's not that independent.
Right. So she said I wasn't cooperating with her, so I felt like they weren't cooperating with me either, so I didn't have to tell them where I got the video from. So I said, well, it's surfaced. So I told my attorney, I said, you know what? It's a dash cam footage out there, and he asked me how I know. I told him Larry Marinick told me. And he was like, when did you talk to him? I said, I went down to his office. I had wrote them a letter, had it typed up, notarized and everything, and I made my copy for myself, and I handed him to him. And I'm like, this is for y'all, because I want to know what happened to my son on that night, because it's a bunch of lies and y'all covering it up. We fought to get that video released. Me, Damien, Black Lives Matter Chicago, we marched, we protest. We wanted that video to be released. But the coward that kept the video here was Rahm Emanuel. And I went after him too. I need that dash cam footage released of my son being murdered because y'all lying and y'all covering it up. Like I tell everybody, when Laquan McDonald got killed, he got killed like 8 days after my son. My son and Laquan McDonald, only reason why Ron got reelected because he kept both of those tapes his around the election time. Like I tell him today too, my son wasn't a tax write-off. You can't pay me to shut up. I'm not signing no paper, no nothing with nobody. All I want for my son is justice. That's what I want for my son, because you murdered him. And then you lied about it. It was like a meeting for like JB, and Rom showed up, and he had the nerve to speak, but he didn't know who I was when he spoke, so I'm like, oh, Rom in here? And everybody's like, where he at? I'm like, he's out there. So now all the other mothers going towards him. I'm like, I need to holler at you. So when I said my son's name, he turned around and looked like, give me 1 minute. Then he ran out the door, and we ran out behind him.
And these are other moms whose sons were also killed by police?
Yeah, he ran. Right after that, I guess they see that they couldn't intimidate me. So my dog had got out the yard, and my daughter called. She like, Mom, the dog out the yard. I'm like, okay, grab the chain and put him back in there. So by the time she got down the stairs to do that, the police had shot the dog in front of the house, in front of the kids. So they did, they did a lot of stuff to try to intimidate me. They gotta come stronger than that, because they can't break me. When they kill my son, it's like, fuck them. That's how I feel towards them. So.
After Ronnie Mann's death, the state attorney Anita Alvarez said the shooting was justified and that she wouldn't press charges against George Hernandez. And one of the things that you succeeded at is working with groups like Asada's Daughters and got Anita out of office.
Yeah.
Bitch, bye. But Hernandez still hasn't been charged. So like, at this point, one of the things I'm wondering is like, how are you envisioning justice for your son, and where is that struggle at right now?
I met with the state's attorney, Kim Fox, back in October this year, and they're supposed to notify me November the 9th, and here it is December, getting ready to be December the 9th, and I haven't heard from her yet. So I'm about to start some bullshit.
Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. is the son of two freedom fighters, Akua Njeri and Fred Hampton Sr., who was assassinated by Chicago police on December 4th, 1969. He's the founder of the Prisoners of Conscience Committee and the co-host of the Free 'Em All radio program, organizing to save his father's childhood home, the Hampton House. Please welcome Fred Hampton Jr.
It was part of the ongoing COINTEL program, an acronym for Counterintelligence Program, a program in which directly from the federal government said it was a program created to discredit, to dismiss, to disrupt, and to destroy any black nationalist movements, in which over 90% of it was directed to the Black Panther Party. It consisted of tactics such as the assassinations of just turned 17 years old, little Bobby Hutton, on April 6, 1968, in Oakland, California. He was the treasurer for the Black Panther Party, which also COINTELPRO, ironically, 2 days prior to that, the assassination of Dr. King, April 4th, 1968. It consisted of tactics of forcing various members of the Black Panther Party and all other organizations into political exile, some of which to this day remain in political exile. One noted one is Assata Shakur. December 4th, the Chicago Police Department, armed with a floor plan so detailed that they even knew a pack of cigarettes may be inside the house. The federal government went to the extent to have the YMCA had sent a group of young guys ranging about 14 years old who did unofficial security for Chairman Fred, sent them out of town on a winter retreat. The federal government also had an agent provocateur place Seconal, a knockout drug, inside the Kool-Aid of Chairman Fred prior to the assassination, in which after we had an independent autopsy, it was discovered that there was enough Seconal, enough knockout drug to technically knock a horse out.
And you've said for years that like counterinsurgency, right, like and that type of surveillance did not end with COINTELPRO in the 70s. And I'm thinking now about like the number of activists from Ferguson who have been killed in the last few years. How are you seeing like counterinsurgency function right now in this political moment?
Our Pacific dynamics need to be pointed out. Like some people say that such organizations as the Black Panther Party had just faded away. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, before he became Chairman Fred, the federal government, the FBI, had placed a wiretap on my grandmother's telephone when he was 14 years old. They had recognized his organizing capabilities when he had took on the junior NAACP from around 7 to 300 members in about 7.5 month time period. In fact, DC Bureau of the federal government, they thought it was a typo. They said he can't be 14 years old. And even with the Rainbow Coalition, contrary to many people have been misinformed, believe it was Reverend Jesse Jackson, it was actually Chairman Fred that organized the Rainbow Coalition in a city that remains one of the top segregated cities in the country. He was able to deal with the race as well as the class contradiction. He had won a group of poor whites known as the Young Patriots, who at one time was so reactionary, wearing Confederate flags in their jackets, won in certain points of political unity. The Young Lords, at least with Cha-Cha Jimenez, won in certain points of political unity. And many, what we refer to as the unpoliticized street tribes. That's a term that we use as opposed to calling them gangs. Because our position is that the worst gang in Chicago is the Chicago Police Department. The worst gang in LA is the LA Police Department, so on and so forth. These are things to be noted because, again, it brings it home and puts it in concrete form. Fast forward to the day. There have been several assassination attempts on my life. There have been different attempts to hijack the legacy, continuous attempts to hijack the legacy of the Black Panther Party. Right now, one of the major campaigns we're fighting for right now is the fight to save the childhood home which Chairman Fred grew up in. We've been there fighting financially, but most important politically. Remains to be an actual attempt to what is referred to as salting the earth. they were similar to like something about 30 years ago on the west side where he was assassinated. They had different people pushing drugs, pushing narcotics. Similar to like in West Oakland, where the heart of the Black Panther Party was organized in that. The government flooded it with dope. It's not by coincidence that the west side of Chicago was hit the hardest with the dope. This was the salt of earth to take any memory away of resistance from. These are different examples of the COINTELPRO, the counterinsurgency. Where Chairman Fred is buried at right now in Haynesville, Louisiana. His tombstone is shot up annually by law enforcement, right now as we speak. In Menard concentration camp, where Chairman Fred was at in 1969, where I was at in 1999. Both of our photos still are in the gun towers right now today. If you get caught with a photograph of me or Chairman Fred Sr., you will give an additional 6 months added to your sentence right now. These are these are some of the attacks and bruntons that we deal with, and it's something you mentioned earlier about Michael B. Jordan, you addressed about the Panther. And the deal is a lot of individuals and or organizations can they can afford the luxury of being black when it's beneficial, playing Panther when it's profitable, and claiming it has some connection to the Cubs, from the Black Panther Party Cubs when it's comfortable. But these are brutal realities that, so not only revolutionaries, but people who are victims of police terrorism and the families are, just some dynamics like Dorothy Holmes talked about, just even the dog being shot by the police. Saying? Some people say, oh, you paranoid. This system, this counterinsurgency is 24/7. It's psychologically, financially. Tupac talked about how his mother couldn't get a job. These are different dynamics that are waged on people in general, but in particular those who dare to speak up.
And so now we're in this moment where we've seen a real resurgence of like radical activism for like black liberation, and at the same time we're seeing black power symbolism kind of become fashionable again and being absorbed into pop culture. So like, do you see a risk of history repeating itself as like of these radical movements getting co-opted and the radical politics about them kind of getting left behind?
One of the disadvantages in many cases is it's not an acknowledged war. It's not an acknowledged war. Other communities at least have the quote-unquote benefit of an acknowledged war. You have terms like political prisoners, where it's acknowledged. You know what I'm saying? Like even within the black community in particular, Obama, that's not only they're not, releasing black political prisoners, they even make mention that they exist. You know what I'm saying? And you have other countries, other places, you have terms like propaganda bombs. In our community, it's referred to as love and hip hop shows. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So just the dynamic, you know what I'm saying? You have euphemisms like war on gangs, war on drugs, you know what I'm saying? These are euphemisms which puts the people at a disadvantage to, like Alcoholics Anonymous say, the first step in addressing the problem. Let's recognize we have a problem. People are asking some legitimate questions now. People are saying, how is Lupe Fiasco get a whole album, one song called Chairman Fred's Speeches, and you're saying, and no support on this campaign? People are calling the question, calling Kaepernick. They say, okay, you come in dressed like the Panther Party, so on and so forth. The deal is, in war, it's tangible contradictions that are happening. This campaign is up in the ante. So it's not, we say it's bigger than the building, more significant than the structure. We're not trying to get this just from my personal house. This is a place where we're fighting for institution to have a conversation on our own terms. And many people who have been running around, again, they can hop in, play Panther, throw uniforms on. The people, not me, the people are flooding their Twitter accounts. The community is calling the question, and these are necessary contradictions that have to happen so people can start saying, who's playing games? Because the deal is, this serious business. People have called cases. People you get 6 months in isolation for having a picture of this man.
The irony of Hampton's death occurring almost half a century ago is how relevant his thinking is for our current social and political moment. These days, as a state and city constantly cuts resources in black and other racial minority communities, Hampton advocated for grassroots, sovereign community support systems, opening up a free clinic on 16th and Springfield the last year of his life. Currently, as Hollywood and the culture industry is co-opting and capitalizing off current radical resistance by black people and other minorities with corporate products like Marvel's Black Panther, rather than celebrate the inclusion like so many do today, Hampton raged against this kind of cultural nationalism, calling it pork chop nationalism that only feeds capitalism, fosters false consciousness, and swaps out radical action for superficial representation. And in this moment of activist movements siloed within identity confines, or when everyone thinks representative diversity is enough and a government built to kill us is revolution, Hampton advocated for a racial, radical solidarity, working towards dismantling capitalism and an imperialist government, working with the young lords amongst others, and calling for white power to white people, brown power to brown people, yellow power to yellow people. Hampton fought for revolution with a revolutionary insistence that was not bound up in reactionary politics. So I want us to ask ourselves as we leave tonight, how are we keeping Hampton's revolutionary spirit alive, not just by fucking remembering it, but by fucking embodying it? Hampton was well aware that his radical position put him at risk of being unpopular, and that many radicals go unappreciated in their time. And finally, I want you to ask all of you to hug and get the backs of all the radical people in your lives. Protect the radicals in your life, and foster and give so much love to the rising radicals of the future. Thank you so much for coming out tonight.
To get off my pivot, I can't even do it. Got a night on me, y'all ain't even moving. Y'all be just talking, it ain't even music. To give it a listen, I can't even do it. Time will pass over, you ain't even Jewish. I'm not that sober, I can't even do it. Smelling that odor, I ain't even blew it. System be so lost, that nigga can't fold up. Like nigga, wait, hold up, can't even do it. Ay, but if it's paper, let's do it. Try take a bag and you ain't even fluent. Talking about royalty, y'all cannot talk about that loyalty. You ain't even fluent.